Well. Hope this should be working. Don't know why it wouldn't be working. Anyway, how are you, folks? Let me get my chat up here. Comments. Click on comments. It's been a while with StreamYard, but you say hi to all those that have joined. If anyone has, I have to look at YouTube to see the user count. Oh, no. It shows me up in the eye. Right up in the eye. It shows me 8 people. Well, welcome, all 8 of you. And this is going to be a little process on the Idaho4. What's up there, Noni McPoppins? Cool name. We're wait for a few people to populate and then get into it. Even the let me see. Let's see. What do we got? I can post a link if anyone wants to come up on the screen, have a discussion, maybe go over some info and try to understand what it is we've been seeing for the last 3 years. I think we're all going cross-eyed. Matter of fact, for me, it's just my personal opinion, but I'm so good looking when I look in the mirror, I cross my eyes so I can see myself twice. I like them. Are we smoking in Lucky Charms? Yeah, I'll put a link in there. If you're one of those haters that don't have the capacity to question what you're being told, you're welcome to come up for a minute or two, as long as I can tolerate you. Generally, that's very, 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 very short period of time. So let's get going. We see all these new reports coming out there. Dr. Turvey and who's the other woman's name? I can't think of her name. But I was on Devil Advocates. Lee. Oh man, I don't know how much in common Lee and I have, but we do have some points in the Idaho4 that I think align pretty well. I think a few of the things I shared in his stream are really what I wanted to focus on in this stream. I think some points. That's it, Barbara Wolf. What's up there, Bonnie Murphy? Some of the points made in that stream are something I just wanted to cover on my stream here and get some feedback from the chat. Or if someone wants to jump up on here, they can reinterpret what I thought and maybe point me in a different direction, which is always very helpful, right? Bonnie Murphy, number one with a crown. I don't know how those crowns were assigned or where the hell they come from, but yeah, there they are. You're number one. Where do I want to start? I think one of the chief things that I want to point out right up front is that I think a lot of people are taking what Turvey and others have said about the diluted blood found on areas of the second floor, right? The common areas. I think a lot of people mistake the statement diluted blood is a statement that blood was clean, that area was clean. And the diluted blood is not pointing to a cleanup of the second floor wall and the ledge and the knee wall. The diluted blood is not saying that somebody tried to clean those areas and that blood got left behind from clean. And if you look at some of the samples, you'll see that the diluted blood ran down the wall, but you're not seeing it smeared or wiped outside of its original path. When they talk about the diluted blood, it's my opinion that blood was hit that wall already diluted. And I think you're seeing some of that in the explanation from the prosecution where they're saying it could have came from Zana's saliva, which is, the most ridiculous thing of all. Unless Zana's face was covered with Kaylee's blood, and Maddie's blood, and Ethan's blood. That's just stupid, right? The other stupid thing that the prosecution said is the perpetrator committed the crime naked. Well, then why didn't they tear every bathroom drain out of that house? Why didn't they remove those tubs? Why didn't they do what would be required for a naked person to commit that crime? Right? So, aside from all the areas that were ignored, right? All the blood that was ignored. When we talk about diluted blood, remember the blood landed on those areas diluted. They weren't hit the wall and then diluted. That's my understanding of what they're telling us, and I think that understanding then helps you see things slightly different than the fact that itself is proof of a cleanup of the second area, and it's not. That's the realization you have to wrap your head around. The finding of diluted blood itself doesn't suggest that the second floor was clean. It suggests that the person, the implements, their clothing, the dog was clean and cast off from those cleaned items are what you're finding on the wall. You see? Now, it seems a little maybe twisted or complex, but it really isn't. If your hands are covered in blood and you wash them, you got nothing to dry them on, and even if you use your coveralls, you may be, casting off diluted blood. And that's my interpretation of what we're seeing when we see the images of diluted blood. What was I going to say? And just as an example of why I see it the way it is. I don't know how many people have ever washed a wall. Okay. But when you wash a wall, believe it or not, you're supposed to start from the top and wash your way down. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think you start from the bottom and work your way to the top, but washing walls is the exact opposite. And why? Because the streaks that could come from the cleaner and from the washing of the wall run down the wall. And even though you've already wiped the bottom of the wall, as you work up, more and more that cleaning solution can run down the wall. And running down the wall, those streaks will show through the areas that you thought you already cleaned. So you always attempt to clean your wall from the top down. That's my understanding of cleaning. When you look at the perpetrator cast off inside that home on Queen Road, you're seeing something ran down the wall. Diluted blood ran down the wall. It didn't run down the wall and get wiped. So there's no evidence of the walls of cast off being wiped. Is really what I want. So that would indicate that the cast off came from, I think Miss Potts was the one that pointed this out to me before. That cast off may have been from the dog being clean, the dog shaking off the water. And in that water or in whatever cleaning products they may have used on the dog, if the dog was washed, that would result in diluted cast off hitting the wall and running down. I think that helps us change and understand the crime scene a little bit differently. I think that the dilutedness means there was a cleanup, but I don't suspect the cleanup was specifically the room. It was more the perpetrator or perpetrators and or the implements used that were cleaned. And they were cleaned in the crime scene at the conclusion of the crime. That is just as important as arguing that they cleaned the walls or cleaned the crime scene. Because now we have to then consider with Xana's room and all the evidence and all the blood that was on the floor, and you could see the smears and what appears to be even footprints, right? That would mean that the concentration of the cleaning, when Turvey says that there's no, you would expect footprints heading towards the sliding glass door if that were the exit, and there aren't on the kitchen floor. That would suggest that that floor had been cleaned. I suspect that the cleaning and again, it also supports the argument, whether you like it or not, that the killings were done in the bedrooms as stated. I don't think there's any reason to argue with that. The idea that they carried these people in from across town or across the street, they may have been let in at knife point, right? That's, I don't know. Maybe Xana and Ethan were let into that property at knife point or gunpoint. I mean, maybe you could, but there's no evidence to support that. But the conditions of the rooms, the cast off within the rooms, is consistent with the murders being done in the rooms and not anywhere else in the home, not in the common area, because the blood you see in the common area is diluted blood, but that diluted blood was cast off in a diluted form. So you can erase the idea of the kitchen and the common area being where these poor four people, what a terrible thing to think. I think that also helps you realize, or at least solidify the context of the rooms were where the action took place, right? The horrific actions that ended these individuals' lives. And I was trying to point out on Lee's show, and I try to point out all the time, I don't technically believe anything. I thought for the longest time that the cast off that was described by Turvey and others in the common area, 18, I took that as that common area was cleaned up, and that's why it's diluted blood. And I would bet you, let's do a poll. How many of you interpret the cast off, the diluted cast off on the second floor proves a cleanup of the second floor? Number one. Or how many of you always realize that that cast off blood was diluted before it hit the wall? Number one, you think it showed, like I did, that the walls were clean, that the blood evidence, they tried to eliminate blood evidence. That's how it got diluted, one. How many of you realized, number two, that that hit the wall as a diluted sample and ran down the wall diluted? Number one or number two, if people want to take a position of a poll here. I think it's significant to see it as it's described. See, cast off cost, it was diluted on the table too, correct. But how many of you think the dilution came from cleaning the room and not cast off from items that had been cleaned, including the perpetrator themselves and their weapons? Cast off coming from them, but from items that were clean. Yeah. But I think I'm glad you said that pretty much. My understanding when I heard this and people have been talking about it was that, and they keep talking evidence of a cleanup. Yeah, and love, Tina, you're being honest. I appreciate that. I thought that too. Evidence of a cleanup to me included these blood stains that they saw and marked and collected, right? And that they never tested. Right? So I think the cast off, based on what we know, to read it properly, and it really should have been defined. I think a lot of these people write these reports like I had a business I sold, but I take for granted because I know so much about what I'm doing that when I describe something to somebody, there's so much they don't know about what I'm doing that I might as well be talking a foreign language. And I think in some of these police reports and some of these documents that we're getting, we all come from that position of not knowing. You take, and I think the writer takes for granted that these reports are to be given to professionals within the court system that understand. But I also fault Turvey for not being a bit more clear, because the cleanup, I suspect, would be focused on footprint movement. The cleanup, footprint movement, whatever you were wearing, whatever weapons you had, whatever gloves you had, whatever you had to clean was cleaned while they were in the property. As they moved through it, cast off from whatever they cleaned is what ended up on the surfaces that they call diluted blood. The blood was not fully, it wasn't as if I cut my finger and flashed my finger at the wall and then went and cleaned it and diluted it. That's not what we're seeing. When my hand had been washed, I cut my hand, I washed my hand. And when I shook my hand, whatever I washed my hand with and the blood hit the wall and ran down the wall. The blood was pre-diluted before it hit the house. Okay? Before it hit the walls and landed where it landed, on the table. Right? And that's important because that tells you unequivocally that there was at least at minimum a cleanup by the perpetrator while they were in the property. So no matter how you look at this to try to understand the short period of time, this also adds to the problem the prosecution was trying to sell, and they did successfully not only sell it to us, they sold it to Brian, and Brian went along with it. But that cast off is indicative of them cleaning themselves and their implements before leaving them. I also have come to a different way of thinking when I start looking at a lot of the things Dylan stated. And you look at a lot of the ways that the crime scene was handled. Like someone in a hurry sprayed blood, not only to dilute it, but so that it doesn't fly. Right? I don't know about what you're saying there. I think what you're seeing is people rinse stuff off, tried to clean stuff off. Okay? And then moving through the home, whether it be to aggress that property or to go from one area to the other, some of that cast off occurred, and that cast off had been, whatever it came from, there was an attempt to clean it. It hit the wall diluted, ran down the wall diluted, remained on the walls diluted blood. People keep saying, well, what was it diluted with? I don't know how you can determine it. To be very honest with you, I'm not sure when something, I don't know, when something's dry, how you could then collect it and determine. I'm sure you can. Okay, Tina, do you understand what now? Tina's getting it. Yeah. So I did all of this chaos. I washed my hands. I took out my gloves. I washed my hands. I washed my knife blade. And rather than dry them off, maybe I wiped them on my coveralls. Or according to that one goofball, I was naked, so I wiped them on my balls. And then when I walked through the house, any cast off that occurred through my movements was diluted blood that then hit the surfaces where it was found. It didn't hit the surface and then become diluted, is the point that I'm trying to make. It quite the exact opposite, which tells you that the killers or killer cleaned up before they left that house. There's a couple of observations and statements that Dylan made that I think that we've fought to say that they're lies, but I honestly don't think that Dylan lied in everything she said. I honestly don't think Dylan lied in everything she said. I think, and this is my opinion, I have no evidence to support that other than the circumstantial evidence that's been provided to us by her own statements, right? That I'm interpreting in a way contradictory to the way she wanted them interpreted. I don't disagree with her saying that Kaylee came back downstairs the third time. I disagree with Ann Taylor on that. I think that there's truth to that. I think there's also truth to her being told, it's okay, I'm here to help, and that it happened on the second floor bathroom. I don't disagree with that at all. I think that there's room in this timeline, there's room in Dylan's testimony under penalty of perjury in her statements to see that that could be actually, in fact, true. Because she lists the events in a specific order. Playing with the dog. I'm going to bed, going upstairs, yelling, oh my God, there's somebody here. And then running back down the stairs, to which she ends up in a bathroom. To me, that supports a couple of different points of view. One, there were already perpetrators on the second floor where Xana and Ethan. Okay. I think that her movement put her in a position to go down that hallway rather than go down the stairs. That her movement, she chose a path that led her to the hallway between that table and that. And she may even have knocked it over for all. But the fact that Dylan states the series of events in such a coordinated, accurate manner, playing with the dog, going to bed, oh my God, someone's here, running down the stairs. And then I hear her in the bathroom whimpering and somebody saying, it's okay, I'm here to help. That really, folks, is a chain of events that is just too sensible. It just makes too much sense for you to say that it couldn't happen that way because we found Kaylee upstairs in her bedroom and they keep saying that after the bloodletting event occurred, none of the victims left their room. Right? So they keep telling you that. And now we want to suggest that this statement was made by Xana. And then because we want to put our own interpretation of what they're telling us, because it sounds so crazy based on the other things that we're being told, we then want to supplant what Dylan is saying with telling people Dylan lied. It couldn't happen that way. But here's the truth. That series of events is stacked accurately in a way that makes it not a lie, not made up, not a mistake. Sorry. It's just too consistent. Where some of the other things she says isn't. Because she's either trying to hide the consistency or play like she don't know. But in this particular situation with Kaylee, and I hope I haven't been saying Xana. If I have, God forgive me. I don't mean to say that. I'm talking about Kaylee. Playing with her dog. Walks up the stairs, said, I'm going to bed, and then runs back down. Somebody's here. And then she hears her in the bathroom, and somebody in there saying to her, not in a nice way, it's okay, I'm here to help. I suspect that is an accurate depiction of what happened. And I think that statement, it's okay, I'm here to help, okay, was what led her back up those stairs. That person in the bathroom then brought her upstairs. At knife point or at gunpoint or any other reason that they had to do it. I also suspect that person was involved in the crime taking place in Xana and Ethan's room. She may have been running towards Zena's room and Ethan to get help from Ethan. That may be, in fact, a great reason why she ran down that hallway. But I suspect that once she got down that hallway, she saw what was going on in Zena's room and turned into the bathroom. This may also coincide with what Steve is saying. They never had to go upstairs. That then would cover his statement. The series of events would mean that it was actually Katie that was confronted by perpetrators in Xana's room that then led her upstairs to the bloodletting of her and May, because there were already somebody up in Caleb and May's room. And we know that because Katie said there's someone here. This now, folks, lays out a crime scene with not just multiple perpetrators, but with perpetrators attacking both rooms at the same time. You're right, pretty much, Caleb. Thank you. This is what happens when we think and we try to break away from believing in information. I don't believe what Dylan said is true. I think that what Dylan says can arguably be made to make sense and can arguably be expanded upon to see the crime scene in a little bit different twist and fills in some of the blanks as to what really happened in that house then. Now, I'm not exonerating Brian Christopher Colbert. Not by any way, shape, or form am I trying to exonerate Mr. Colbert. But what I am trying to suggest is that this was a much more complex crime that had pre-planning and had people involved that are quoted to be as survivors. And that this entire event took place with foreknowledge. With foreknowledge of not just the property, but foreknowledge of when these occupants were all going to be home. Foreknowledge of people in that community that were connected to these victims. I think when you try to make sense of things, you can't just say everything is a lie and write your own song. You can't do that, because for every single lie there's a truth to be told. You can't lie about nothing. If you lie about nothing, there's a reason why you did that. That reason is the truth. I did it to be funny. I did it because I don't like you. I lied because I didn't want to get in trouble. I mean, in other words, you may not be covering up some tragedy, but every fucking lie there's a truth behind the lie. There's a reason behind the lie. And so in this particular situation, and in any situation where you're dealing with another person, there's always something. And I want to just make a quick summation of the little bit that I've discussed. One is the diluted blood is not indicative of the room being clean. The diluted blood is indicative of the perpetrators cleaning themselves and or the tools used to commit these crimes. And that the cast off you're seeing was cast off is diluted blood to begin with, either directly from the perpetrator itself, himself, herself, and or from the tools used to do this horrific crime to the 4 individuals that were killed. That's my understanding as I take time to think about so much of the information that's been dumped. And information I just want to point out, like this information isn't got anything to do with Brian Kohlberger did it or didn't do it, I'm sharing. I'm more trying to take the data that we have, and there's thousands and thousands of data points that I could be wrong, but I'm pretty freaking sure that I'm the only streamer out here, and I do this for my own peace of mind, just so you know, not for money, not for fame. You don't got to agree with me. I do it for my own peace of mind because, like many of you, I want to know the truth. And the truth is there to be seen. The truth is there. It's in plain sight, but it's hard to see. It's hard to see because we've been given all of these fake data points, all this misinterpretation of the evidence, all this ignoring of the evidence. And so much of that has happened that we tend to want to ignore and discount and argue against anything that is true. In other words, it's hard to know what's true And so, because it's so hard, we tend to accept it all as being false. And that comes from believing. That's the problem. And a lot of people say that, I believe this, I believe that. And I'm going to tell you, the biggest sin committed against humanity is to bring the power of belief into information created by human beings. You're not supposed to believe information created by human beings. You're not supposed to. It's almost, I think it's a cardinal sin, to be honest with you. But I think more importantly, it dumbs us down. It builds walls around what we're willing to accept and not accept. Right? And because of that, you don't have discussions with people. You don't share thoughts. You don't take two pieces of information with two or three different people and try to make it make sense. If somebody believes one way or the other, Brian did it, Brian didn't. Now you got people that believe, and the people that believe in that are just, I don't care which way you believe. I'm telling you, in my opinion, it's a mild form of retardation that's infected humanity across the globe. It's a tragedy that we believe anything, because information is wonderful. It's wonderful because it's there to teach you to think. It's there to give you the ability to exercise your mind and learn. And being wrong is the first step. Being wrong and seeing you're wrong is the first step in learning. You can't learn how to tie your shoes until you mistakenly untie them or tie them incorrectly dozens and dozens of times. Think that one through. Now apply thinking to the data that they've given us. The answer is there. But they know we are believers. I don't think Brian did it. I believe he didn't do it. That isn't helping us understand what happened in that crime scene. Now, this is probably also not going to give you the names of the killers. But what it is going to do when you think things through, when you think without belief, the answers you get can't be biased. The answers you get can't be confirmational bias. They have to be true. Or they have to be false because you're fortunate, or maybe you're lucky enough to have someone else that thinks discuss it. You know, I think best, and for those of you that don't know, because I don't really come out here a lot, what do I got? Almost 3,000 subscribers, and I thank every one of them 1,000 times. I think best when I can sort things out by talking out loud. I do have Asperger's. So, you know, for those of you that know me and call me an asshole, you're mostly right. But the correct term would be Asperger's. And does that make me an asshole? Yeah, sure, okay. I don't object. Go ahead. But thinking is so important. And that's why I say when you sit back with there was diluted blood, diluted cast off. You have to ask yourself, was it diluted before or after it hit the wall? Right? That's what a thinking person does. When was it diluted? And apparently it appears like it was diluted before it hit the wall. And that then would, like, I'll say Miss Potts' name again. When she says it's apparent that possibly a dog shook. Well, a dog that's been cleaned that shook could cause that cast off. There were no towels found in the first room bathroom. Were those towels used to dry Murphy? Could be. Weren't all the stuff in the first floor bathrooms? Why weren't the second, third, and first floor bathrooms tight second? Leah Story, what's up? Let me also say, folks, and I think this is something too that I think Eddie, which is a guy that's on I wish he would come here. I haven't talked to Eddie in a long time. I don't know. Eddie, I don't think really likes talking to me, or like, which is okay. But I think he's one of those guys that I either rub the wrong way or he just, I don't know what it is. But Eddie made points throughout the whole thing, the police involved. And I wouldn't accept that until I saw evidence. I never really thought of that. until after the plea deal. Until after the evidence started to get released. The discovery started to show a consistent pattern of what the police did. But let me say what I think now. And this is partially because Eddie harped on it, but also, more importantly, because of the data that's been released. I think that the committers of this crime were not just simply fraternity people. I think the commission of this crime, the people that literally committed the crime, were high-ranking officials, including people that are associated with the police department in Moscow, Idaho, or in the state of Idaho itself, but mainly in Moscow. I think the people that committed this crime are not simply fraternity people or drug dealers. I think the people that committed this crime are the very people that investigated this crime and directed the investigation to go in the direction of crime. And anybody that thinks this through will agree with this point. Anything that could have named anybody except Brian was ignored. And now a lot of people want to say, well, why would they were protecting Jack, they were protecting Stonewall, whatever these people's names are. I think you're highly mistaken. I think it's highly mistaken. I think really what they were protecting is the hierarchy in Idaho itself and or Moscow itself, in connection to some kind of activity that would destroy or bring that town down. I don't know exactly what it was. I can't because there's no data to support this. What I'm telling you is my thinking of what I've seen, my thinking of information given to us. My thinking leads me to this conclusion. Does that mean it's right? No, not even close. Doesn't mean it's right. But I honestly think, folks, I think if you sit down and ask who had much to lose that would take 4 young individuals' lives in that horrific way, how much was at stake here? It wasn't some deal with some college buying some fucking Phoenix university, although that could have something to do with it. I can't discount it, but you can't connect it. Are they protecting Jack Showalter? Are they protecting Hunter? I can't see it. Does that mean those people weren't involved? No, not at all. Not at all. But they were protecting something much bigger than this. And I think that's the hidden story here. I think all these little goose chases, you're looking at all these videos and listening to all this audio, there's no question that there was a horrific crime committed in that home that resulted in 4 murders. Okay? I think based on the data that they've given us, there's a lot of information that may help us sort out who was being protected. But I don't believe that there's many people out there that will understand or even consider this line of reasoning, because it's contrary to what they believe, because they were taught to believe in information. This white car. How many of you believe that car was involved? If you stop believing and start thinking, you'll see that car had about as much to do with that crime as you did on a personal. The chances that car had anything to do with this crime are more than the argument they made about the DNA they claim they got for Brian Kober. The odds are astronomically big, bigger than the entire known universe, that car had anything to do with this crime. And why? Well, a thinking person would suggest to you that car not only couldn't have been involved in the crime, right? Because the car made too many erratic drives and too many different things to be anything more than either a delivery person, a sober driver dropping other people off into that neighborhood, an Uber, someone buying drugs. Listen, I could fill in a dictionary, literally, of all the things that car could have been in that neighborhood for. But the one thing I wouldn't agree with is that it was part of that crime. There's just nothing to support it. How do I know that? Well, because the prosecution stated that to us on the day of his sentencing after he pled guilty. There's no evidence. It's all exculpatory. In the car is exculpatory. It proves to you the car wasn't. There's no way that car could be involved. And there's one reason why you know it wasn't involved. Because even though they took it all the way down to the metal, even though they took it the whole thing apart, not once did they say there was evidence of Clorox bleach used on this vehicle to clean or sanitize. There was sanitizing chemicals used. There were trace chemicals that are consistent with. Nowhere in the fucking world do you see that. And that would be something they would look for. That's your last dollar. So not only do they not find crime-related DNA or evidence, forensic evidence in the vehicle, they did not find or even try to make the argument that there was evidence that had been removed. Therefore, folks, the chances this car was involved are beyond beyond any human being's capacity to calculate. Even our most world-renowned mathematicians, which, just so you know, a world-renowned mathematician confirmed my analysis of something that I was saying on Twitter 2 years after I made the argument and continued to make it for 2 years. This person took that particular argument and did a calculation and showed that my argument was true. Okay? I don't care how many days you spend cleaning that car. I don't care. You know, people don't understand. Underneath the carpet of your car is an insulating pad for sound deadening. Underneath the insulating pad is metal. Any transfer of blood through that carpet would have shown up in 3 different locations. The carpet, the pad, and the floor made of metal. Any cleaning solution would not penetrate down and clean. It, although may dilute blood, it would not remove it. And bleach is all we know that we can say kills for sure DNA. There was none of that found in the vehicle. No reports of it at all. Therefore, there was no cleaning of the vehicle. There was no need to clean the vehicle because the vehicle wasn't part of the crime. I don't care how many headlights the car had, how many fog lights it had, sunroofs it had. It had nothing to do with this crime. It's a red herring. It's a blatant lie that they used to construct the case against an oddball guy from out of town, which is the exact kind of person, the perfect patsy they luckily fell upon. Brian Christopher Hope. The rest of that crime scene is so indicative of not just multiple perpetrators, but so indicative of pre-plan, so indicative of a time-consuming execution. Although the wounds that killed were brutal, they weren't the first wounds inflicted upon these individuals. I think that unequivocally to be accurate. I think some of the minor wounds were obviously inflicted first. I think that there were discussions. I think that there were arguments. I think that something happened in that house that we're never supposed to know about. I think that when the minivan went to that house with those 3 cowboy hat wearing son of a bitches, there was something in that house they had to make sure was no longer in that house. Okay? I think that some of the stories that these girls tell us, no matter how outrageous they sound, there's truth to them. Now, I don't think there's anything to do with him being hired at the station. I think if that was you or me driving around, it'd be you or me sitting in Brian Kohlberger's place. I promise you that. I promise you that. That crime had so much more there's so much undercurrent to this crime. There's so much back information that we're being hidden from us. That we're all running around trying to blame it on this guy and that guy, exactly what they expect us to do. I mean, we are controlled whether we want to accept that or not. For everybody that says, I think out of the box, you need to pull your head out of your ass. You can't think out of the box because there is no outside of the box. Everything you know and ever will know comes from inside the box. Therefore, everything you look at, think about, and believe about is from the box. There's no way to take yourself out of it. Very few people can do that. Einstein thought out of the box. But he took box information to climb out of the box. You see? Now, I don't want to claim I have any intelligence like Payne, like the Purge guy. You're welcome to jump up here. Don't get too right up, you obnoxious, or I have to kick your ass. I'll kick you in the pubes, so you end up your pubes will end up on your head. You could use that though. You could use a full head. Anyway, so let's review what I've been sharing. The statement about Kaylee's movements on that particular night are accurate. Dylan told us the truth. She did end up in the bathroom, and there was a man in there that told her, it's okay, I'm here to help. And I'm going to say to you that those words come, or would come, from somebody in emergency services. Okay? That's what I think. Because I've engaged with people in those services, whether it be the police, the fire department, an ambulance. It's okay, I'm here to help. Would be a natural statement. Especially, why would it be said on the second floor bedroom where 2 other people were murdered? Why? Why would Kaylee run down the hallway towards Zana's room, if not to try to locate and get help from Ethan? Why, after she yells, there's someone here, and comes running down the stairs, why would she head to that room? Ethan gives you an understanding of what would potentially be what she was looking for, right? Because it's spur of the moment. Think this one through, folks. Spur of the moment. You're a woman, okay? And Kane the Purge is in one of the bedrooms in the back of the house, and you see something that scares the living shit out of you. Are you going to run out of the house, or are you going to run down to the guy that's in the back bedroom? Unfortunately, you're probably going to catch the Purge touching himself. However, he may be available to defend you. I can't say for sure because I don't really know the guy. Oh, at least I got something to pick on, whether he's up here or not. Hang on, I should check the back room. I got to check the back room. Oh, yeah, he's not in. How dare you, sir? Anyway, so where was I? I sit on YouTube rather than sitting inside StreamYard, but I'll check back and look here. A couple of the things that Dylan said I think are accurate. I think when she said we did a deep one, I think that's accurate. But I think people misinterpreted that to mean that the blood stains were cleaned up on the second floor, and I don't think that that's what she was referring to. I think the deep clean came from the floors. I think the floors were clearly cleaned up. I don't suspect that the walls or any of that other stuff was cleaned up at all. I don't think they even noticed what was there. I don't think they were really even looking for it because in there, let me just tell you that. Because there was no violence on the common area or second floor, there was no reason to seriously look for blood splatter there. Right? If I walk across the parking lot and shoot you, I'm not going to look around the whole parking lot for a shell casing. I'm going to look at where I shot you. I'm not going to go backtrack across the parking lot. And the same would apply to this particular crime. Why would you clean the common area when the actual crime took place on the third and second floor bedrooms? And I can confirm and take, if you want to think along with me, I can show you that the taking of all four lives occurred in the two bedrooms to which the victims were found. The wounds themselves prove that. And that's not been observed by many of the streamers. But the actual wounds themselves tell you that they were killed in the locations they were found. The most obvious one being Xana. And all the bloodletting that took place in her skull. All of the cast off and everything that you see is consistent with that crime taking place on the bedroom floor in that area of the bedroom. There's no way to argue against that. She wasn't brought in from somewhere else. All of these guys that keep bringing up the stories that came in from here, came in from there. Look at this video. Look at this sound. Listen to this noise. It's bullshit. You can't argue with what you can show to be true. You have to accept, whether you like it or not. When you want to apply your ability to think against the information in front of you, you've got to shed what you believe. Stop believing and start thinking. Xana was absolutely attacked and fought for her life on that floor in that area of her bedroom. And Ethan, the Purge backstage. Let me see. Huh? Look at your pole dancing in your avatar. What's up with that? What the hell are you doing, Kane?
That's Brian high kicking.
Hey, Brian, that looks like you when you had hair.
I don't remember those days.
You old bastard. Are you following my reasoning with what I'm putting down?
I don't know. It seems to me that with the blood patterns and shit like that, that this whole thing was staged. It's like they almost painted everything on in those rooms. There's not enough blood to match what these wounds are.
There is, Kane.
Let me just point out to you. They tortured them. We know that now.
I don't disagree with that, but let me just tell you, the bloodletting, just so you know, the three victims in the beds were all stabbed in the subclavian artery, which is an internal hemorrhage. It's not external. You don't bleed out. You bleed in. You drown in your own blood. So let's be clear. The bloodletting that you see, the movements of a knife and a blade attacking Kaylee or Xana, even Ethan, are consistent with an attacker. But three of these victims, unlike Xana, three of them were all struck in the subclavian artery, which requires somebody in a position lower than you or you're taller than them. Because the only way to hit that artery is a direct straight blow into the body behind the collarbone. So the tip of the knife has to be pointing at your feet, not a wound where you're going straight into the chest. A wound that comes in from behind the collarbone straight down into the body. That's the only way to hit the subclavian artery. Therefore, you can rest assured that these people were sitting on that bed when that blow was wielded. And that subclavian artery and vein is an internal hemorrhage. It doesn't squirt like a jugular vein. It bleeds inside the body, and you're going to be incapacitated within 15 to 30 seconds. Once that wound is struck, then you become almost helpless, and shortly you're going to die because your body will pump all of its blood into its chest and stomach cavity and intestine cavity. You're going to get cast off from the additional wounds because you're still alive. Your heart's still pumping, right? And so when they keep stabbing you and pulling the knife in and out, you're going to get that cast off. You can see it on the walls. When you look at Ethan and Kaylee and Maddie, and where that vein is a teller. That even gives you the modus operandi of the killer. That's too specific of an area to hit without having prior knowledge of the damage it will cause to your victim. It's not an accidental wound. When you go to a knife fight, if you and I are standing up fighting with a knife and I'm trying to stab you with a knife, I'm going to have direct wounds, punctures into your arms, shoulders, your chest. None of that can hit the subclavian artery because it's protected by your chest. I'm telling you, that wound is so telling, and so many people don't understand how important that wound is on 3 victims. That's not a fucking accident. And because the angle of the blade has to be straight into you, straight down, the only way to do that effectively in this particular situation would be consistent with their statement they were killed in their beds in a sitting position, allowing the perpetrator with that knife to drive it straight down into the body. So I completely disagree with you. If you look at some of the data that's given us, not all of it is a lie. And some of the information given to us explains why it isn't a lie. And I think that wound on 3 victims that are claimed to have been in bed, I think that's accurate. They were not only just in bed, they were sitting and struggling. That wound was then inflicted. And then the other wounds came out.
That makes sense. They definitely tortured them. And I think that the reason that they took portions of the drywall out because messages were written on those portions of the drywall, and it makes me think that the cops knew the second that they walked in that house exactly what had happened, who was responsible, what the intention was, and what the message was. I think even some of the wounds were messages, like especially the X's on Santa's head, on her arms, on
who do you think would be protected the way this investigation? Here's what I want to say. This investigation focused on anything that could identify anything than the story they wanted to sell. Who do you think they were protecting?
I don't think there was an investigation because of that fact, because they knew right away who it was. It just seems like they were mulling through, and the fact that they covered up so much and still are trying to redact shit should tell you that there's definitely somebody protected. I wish I could give you a name. It seems to me that it would be somehow related to the frats. Because look at this. If the frats are involved and you've got people in the frat doing this kind of ritualistic killing where it seems like kind of cultish, where you have like a new Manson. We have an article from, not the Daily News, but the Globe or something in Britain that was written that said this was a ritualistic killing, the new Manson cult, blah, 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 blah. It was so taken down, but Scott Green somehow said he had it removed. You cannot even find that shit on the internet. We've been doing deep dives. Fortunately, JJ has a copy of it, and it just shows the lengths that they went to hide something. And I really think it's as simple as, I don't know,
I believe
it's something in the Greek system, yeah.
But I think because of the nature and the quantity of crime here, that what's being protected isn't something as simple as the Greek system, nor is it something as simple as a few frat books. I think when you look at this and you ask yourself certain questions like, who's that important? Who has that much need to hide? And I think it's the authorities themselves. When you look at how the crime scene was handled, they sent the least knowledgeable people, they put the least knowledgeable person in charge, and then those people were told what to do. As far as the lower level guys, I'd say they probably don't know shit other than what they were told. However, I think that there's a bigger conspiracy here. I think that what was being protected wasn't some kid with a rich family. I think it was something about that town, that the people that run that town, the people that police that town are protected. And they committed the crimes themselves. I think when you listen to the statement, it's okay, I'm here to help, shows a level of involvement by an emergency worker of some kind, whether it be police, firemen, or ambulance. That's a statement that somebody like that would easily make, especially if you consider the fact that Dylan did tell us the true path of Kaylee's movements, that Kaylee did run down that hallway to that bathroom, that somebody did corner her in that bathroom and say, it's okay, I'm here to help. When you take some of the facts of the story and start to understand that some of it has to be true, not everything can be a lie, and then start trying to figure out what is true and what isn't, and then look at the enormity of the avoidance of not testing all of the DNA, the glove, every other location of DNA, they didn't run to dirt. They found the most minuscule piece of information and ran that like it was they won the Mega Millions lottery. Who would they protect? And it can't just be a fraternity unless the fraternity and those that are in power are connected in a way that can't be revealed to the public. There's something going on in that town that's so big that these people were taken out to protect it. And then the investigative method used continued to protect that same thing by not investigating the case in a way that's consistent with how crimes are investigated. They intentionally.
I honestly think it comes down to trafficking, Sarge. I think that's probably the connection there, and those people that are involved with that, you know, they have a shiny face in the morning when you go to work, but what they do behind the scenes is horrific.
We know for sure that during that period of time, there were hundreds of thousands of children that went missing. There were hundreds of thousands of women turned into sex workers and sold around the globe that were marketed through the United States directly. That these crime cartels, these sex traffickers and drug cartels were all actively involved. We know for a fact, and they keep the secret from the population, that sending your kid to college is a dangerous thing today, because who's the best consumer for drugs? Well, your kids. Where's the best place to do that? At a university. And through what mechanism? Maybe fraternities. I think that what we're being not told is much bigger than protecting somebody named Hunter or Jack or Jake or John. I think that what's being protected with this investigation goes to the heart of the evil that's been transpiring in this country. And people involved in higher places were aware of it. That may connect to the college. A lot of people were concerned about them buying that one university, Phoenix. But if there's a connection there, I've reviewed and looked. I can't see a connection because that deal died, and then Idaho was paid $15 million in damages for dying. So in other words, could that be a part of it? Maybe, but I think it's much more local. It's much more sensitive to this particular community to have eradicated them women.
Shows how crooked that green is. If you look at the report from that, it's completely redacted. He basically used Horton Lovel's and Leon Black's companies, which were connected to Epstein, to do the investigation into the value of Phoenix University, and it ended up being about $15 million of basically embezzlement, and there was no investigation.
No, that $15 million, you're not accurate. You're not accurate. The $15 million was a lawsuit settlement because the deal to buy Phoenix University fell through because of Phoenix University.
He literally paid these companies $15 million against the wishes of the legislature. He embezzled that money to his former company, 100%. But
Well, the
beyond
$15
that,
million you're talking about, though, I'm telling you, I researched this. It comes specifically
oh, we
from a lawsuit
researched it,
filed.
Sarge. Believe me,
From a
he
lawsuit
embezzled
filed.
that money. That money was paid out from the university to these companies.
It may have been, but it was reimbursed by Phoenix University. That money was returned through a lawsuit. See, I understand what you're saying about the embezzlement. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but what I am saying is the University of Idaho sued Phoenix University for breach of contract, and they were then rewarded a $15 million in legal fee and other stuff. You can look at it, find it up online when you research Phoenix University. Phoenix University is a very troubled institution. They've had a lot of fines. They had to forgive $47 million in tuition. They were targeting people and lying to people, making them think they were connected to Google and TikTok and Intel, and to get enrollment up and get the people's money and get all these federal loans. There's a scam going on with Phoenix University, undoubted. And I think that had part of the attraction for the University of Iowa, and also for that town to connect Phoenix to them, because I think that was a massive targeting for money laundering and all kinds of other nonsense. I don't doubt that. But be aware that the $15 million that you're claiming was embezzled, whether it was or not, they won a lawsuit to get the return of that money out of Phoenix University.
Well, that's no surprise at all. That's exactly how Scott operates. But as far as going back to the known knowns of what's being truthful and what's not, is that we know Dylan is about 70% lies. The 911 call itself came from Whitcomb 911 or whatever. It's 2 minutes and 38 seconds or whatever. The actual 911 call is 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So I don't even think we've heard the real 911 call. I don't know if they did it with AI or what, but that was a leaked 911 call. And then also Dylan claims to not have made any outside calls past 4 a.m. and she made like 7 calls. She's taken all kinds of pictures. There's got to be a reason that she's lying, somehow a connection in that. So it's to take anything that she says as truth
I think
stretch. You know, also everything that she says lines up with that stupid Vampire Diaries TV show. It's like she literally did a what was that thing the you used to put on the newspaper, the little putty, silly putty. It's like she silly puttied that freaking thing into the story somehow.
Well, I think Dylan told us information that's valuable, that is accurate. I think Dylan also told us a lot of information that was not accurate. And I think most of the inaccurate information that she gave she was led down that path. The eyebrow.
I think if you listen to like the 112 audio and then you listen to like the 911 call, you hear the same whining all the way throughout it of Dylan's one. I think she was pressured. She was under some kind of pressure, and she was just breaking down the entire time. They were just, it does seem that there were forces at work here that were unbreakable.
Well, I said that in the beginning. I don't know if you were here, but this entire crime was not just premeditated; it was pre-planned, and it went into action the minute Dylan was able to convince Kaylee to come back.
Yeah, she went to Rathburn or whatever to convince her to come back. It does seem like she lured her back there.
She lured her back. Whether she knew the extent of what was going to happen to these people is not known, but I suspect she knows a lot more than she's telling us. But I think some of the information she gave us, the police went out of their way to support her statements. When she said she saw a man clad in black, they helped describe the mask. 1. 2, they claimed that footprint found by her door proved her statement somebody walked by her door. And that's false, because they found the shoe that made that print in the fucking house. All right? So those are 2 major things that the identification of who she claims was in that home are completely wrong. They're not things that she came up with. She didn't discover the shoe print, right? Her
Right.
story was probably all along. Her story was to say if you say you saw anything, saw some guy in black, but then they went and reinforced this, which with information that was false. They never disclosed to the public that shoe print came from a known shoe in the home and was unrelated to the crime, which they could have said. They never did that. They just let everybody think that shoe print proved some guy walked by her room. But on close exam of the shoe print, there wasn't a shoe print that indicated a mode of travel to the kitchen. Not even close. It looked
It was too close to her door. She said that
it was in the
guy was like 5 feet away from her. Now, the gooch was
standing face to face with her.
The gooch was the one that basically interviewed her and put all of these colloquialisms into her speech. So you have things like clad in black, deadpan face, unibrow, those types of things. The gooch is not only by trade a crime scene recreator. She's also a creative writing teacher for true crime. So she goes, and that's her job, is to come up with, and it just seems to fit that she kind of inserted these phrases right into Dylan's. Now the thing is about the cops is they had every chance in the world to know that she was lying at some points, but that never became an issue. It never got brought up. It's like, oh, we're just going to go. And her story remains the timeline, bro.
I think that if you look at the cops that actually were asking questions that would have led them somewhere, that they were no longer the interviewers. That's an issue for me. When you've got cops that are asking questions that are not leading the witness with answers that they're suggesting. So, as an example, well, you were at that party that night, weren't you? That's not what you say. So, when you look at what they brought up the eyebrows. They brought up the style of mask that eventually became the description Dylan adopted. And you have to, when you're seeing this, the questions that we weren't really thinking through were, is there a motive for the police? And what is that motive? Is it just to protect a frat? I don't think so. Why were some of the cops, there was a woman cop, I think, that asked some good questions, but she never interviewed anybody again. I think a state trooper or a federal agent asked some good questions. They never asked anybody any questions again.
The ones in Vegas also, what was it, with Bethany or whatever? It seemed because, what was it? One of the detectives was on the phone, and I think I heard you talk about it before, where as soon as they got on a good line of questioning, he would interrupt and toward it a different direction. And you have people that are in your interviews that they seem to go after, and it seems like these people have really nothing to do with the crime, But when you have people that are really closely associated with it, they got the pig gloves on you, right?
What? Why did I hear someone else in your? There's someone else with you?
No, it's just me.
Oh, I think too when you get to the DoorDash driver and her history and connection, not just to Bill Thompson, but to the town and the police force, that when you get to her different stories, it becomes quite clear that she is involved in this because she was made to be involved. She helped affirm the timeline. She helped create a situation that really, in the end, could have broke the timeline when you got down to her first story, where she saw someone drive next to him, but it was a tan vehicle. In other words, if anybody could have seen anything, the only person that had that capacity was Molly McMichaels. And she just destroys everything they say. Here's the other point. Is the car moving around there? Is it really moving at the times that they claim on those cameras? Why, in fact, did the exact cameras that record the vehicle movements and all of these sounds get withheld from Ann Taylor for about a year? And the argument of withholding the info was that they were trying to get the audio and the video in sync. I mean, they basically admitted they were manipulating shit.
Right, exactly.
Right. And so when you start looking at the truth that's been given, the fact, you have to start looking at it with some truth behind it. And so there's just too many of these coincidental facts that played out in real life in front of us. And then to me, I had to ask myself, who is so important to protect? Why is some little fuck from the Greek life important? And really, he's not. None of those people in and of themselves are that important. And so what would be that important? Well, the people that run the town. Right? What do these youngsters come across? I mean, I'm gonna also point out some crazy shit based on what Dylan said. And whether people like it or not or agree with it or not, it's not important. But I think it answers the question to what she argues she saw. What
Real
she
quick,
saw,
though, getting back to Molly, the thing is, they never did get any digital receipts. They never. There's no warrant request for Uber or for DoorDash to give us the receipt, because I'm telling you, bro, every time you take an order for DoorDash, it is recorded, and every movement that you make is recorded on that thing because they're tracking your phone.
Wait a minute. They did record a DoorDash order placed earlier in the evening by Xana. And this is going to help reinforce a lot of people that suggest the crime took place in an earlier time. That order apparently was delivered at 4 a.m. But let me be very clear. That order was never delivered after it was ordered as it should have been. And the reason was, the reason I think was because the crimes were either in progress or there were the criminals there in the house. And that DoorDash order was never acted on by Molly McMichael or anyone else from DoorDash. I think then the other thing that we know for sure is we were told that the weirdness to the 4 a.m. delivery was that the driver called and picked up the order themselves. And so that tells me, why would she do such a thing when you can't see any direct communication, or at least they haven't showed us any, between her and Xana? What communication did she have that prompted her to make that order? I mean, all this comes, I think, from Molly McMichael, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a big issue. But there's a truth hidden in here. Why wasn't the earlier AM orders delivered, and why was she there at 4 o'clock? Because being there at 4 o'clock would have been a way to help solidify the argument the police were going to make about.
It gives a cover. Exactly.
She fucked that all up for him. Her value became useless because she fucked it all up by telling a different story, right? Because she's drug riddled. So she talked about a blonde-haired guy or a light-haired colored guy in a tan car. That's not it at all. It's supposed to be a dark-haired guy in a white car. She fucked it. You see what I mean? There's truth into a lot of these statements. Did the order happen earlier? It sure did. It was never delivered or picked up. Why? Well, because I think at that point in time, she was told, don't bring the order. And then she was told, I suspect later, if people could have got a hold of her phones and who she was in communication with, they should have done a data dump on her. Why didn't they? Why didn't they? Because law enforcement, most people in the know, she was part of the crime. She was patsy. She was a willing patsy to something she probably didn't even know was going on. When she said she saw a black-haired girl stand up at the window and then duck down when I looked at her, her story became too fucked up, and she became unimportant to the police. Right? I mean, we know that to be true.
I mean, the thing is, we see her walking around outside, so there is evidence that she was there, right?
No, I'm not saying she wasn't there at 4 o'clock. I'm saying that the early order was stopped. She was told, don't deliver it by someone. Right?
And then
later she called in an order to replace that order to be there at 4 o'clock. They wanted her there as a witness of some sort. And I think she was supposed to say black hair, white car. And she got fucked up and said light hair, tan car. This is what I think is happening. I think that she's got a role in this, not as knowing about the murders or being involved directly with the murders, but as being set up in a way that would give legitimacy to their timeline.
Yeah, no, that's a good take. I like that.
And the timeline of when was the first order? 2-something in the morning? When did Xana?
Yeah, it took like 2 hours for it to go through. Right?
But no, listen. The importance of this observation is to go to look at the time the original DoorDash was placed. And then you got cameras with things happening at that specific hours of the morning. You follow me?
Yep.
So I think, based on the data that's all scattered across this fucking board, that order was never acted upon because the people that were doing this crime, it happened earlier than they assessed.
Well, I mean, one of the things she said is that there was 4 orders that were fucked up that she had to go and reorder and pick up. I mean, that 4 orders getting fucked up, that's a travesty if you're doing some kind of DoorDash delivery. That would get you like canned right there. First of all, if you fucked up 4 orders in a row, and secondly, on her DUI arrest, she says, "Oh, they want me to testify against Brian." So at some point,
Right.
she had gotten the name, she had gotten what she was supposed to do.
Well, by then his name was public. Wait, by then his name was public.
Right,
But I think what she did is that's part of the basis of my assessment of what I'm thinking here. That particular involvement or her statements to the public there, oh, I was supposed to be testifying against seeing Brian Koberger there. That's true. That's true. But not because she was an actual witness to Brian Koberger, because that's what she was told to be doing. But she fucked it up earlier on by saying blonde hair, tan car.
Yeah, and unfortunately
Got the
for
car
them,
wrong.
that was
She
on
got the
video.
ID wrong, so she became useless. And that's why they kept arresting her. I mean, because now the girl didn't have any protection from Bill Thompson.
But it definitely exposes the fact that there was corruption in this investigation, for sure.
It wasn't just corruption. It was that they were hiding something important. There's something important that we'll never be aware of. Or maybe we will one day. Maybe someone will come forward. But there was something, I think, that was connected to very important people, to something extraordinarily.
I think the problem with that is no matter what, when it comes up, no matter what it is, I don't think it's going to get Brian out of jail.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think so either.
There's nothing that's going to get by Nye to get an appeal. Anything. I mean, look what happened with that guy in Texas. You know, the guy was guilty for being gay. You know, they came up with panties with the DNA on the panties that didn't match his. You know, I mean, how much more with when you're raping somebody and somebody else's DNA's on the panties, how much more and they said, oh, it wasn't enough to be exculpatory. It's like, okay, all right, whatever you say.
And in this crime, though, it isn't just that the information they had was exculpatory to Brian, and everything they alleged with Brian was exculpatory because it proved to be false. The worst part of the case is everything they avoided pursuing. That's the story. There was intentional avoidance of examining evidence and collecting evidence. For instance, the beds and the comforters and the pillows and the mattresses none of that was removed from the house and brought to the evidence. That had to be requested by Ann Taylor before they ripped the house down. There was a lot of evidence that was ignored. There was a lot of evidence they stayed away from drains, they stayed away from tubs, they stayed away from bathroom examinations. You should have swabbed everything. The toilet, taken a sample. None of that was done. It's in everything that they avoided that tells the story.
Right, like especially
Brian
Bethany's room was totally trashed, and it looks like somebody had come in and out of that window, but there doesn't seem to be any investigation into that room whatsoever. MSM O'Mankins is asking if Ann's involved. I've always said since the beginning that, you know, they always work to push the suspect through together. It's kind of a triad, you know. In this case, she did stand up and say my client's innocent. I think she presented everything as well as she could, and she was just working against a biased judge.
I think there came a point in time where she probably realized that whatever happened to that house was never going to be told. And that Brian
it was a no-win. It was a no-win for her, and they had to take what was best for him, I guess.
I think, I said it in the chat, I think she was maneuvered to stop her defense. I think, and I've said this many times, because Brian was so close with his mother, that I think Ann became a surrogate mother for him. And I think that over 2.5 years, it took her that long to get Brian Koberger to go along with, you're never going to win this. You're going to end up on the death row. And I think that they accomplished with him what they've accomplished with many people that have pled guilty, and that they've trapped you, and you know, I mean, how many days do you got to spend in jail before you realize, I'm going to end up dying, not just being in jail, they're going to execute me. And nothing knowing, let's be in Brian's shoes. You know, none of these accusations are true. You know it. Imagine this, folks. I grew up in an atmosphere where I got punished for everything that happened in that home, and I didn't do most of it. Now, not to say I was just like, I was a fucked up kid, don't get me wrong. But my brother would break something that was important to my mother. They'd blame me. I'd get the ass beat for it. But I know I didn't do it, but I'm still catching the beating. So it was a horrible fucking way to live. And imagine now take that and multiply that by 1,000 and stick somebody in a cage. And everything you say they know is not true. And what's in the balance? Not an ass beating from the fat ass stepmother you got, but murder, shot dead by a firing squad. That's your consequence.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point, because there's a lot of things that were catalysts from this case, such as Othram Labs, Cellbrite, and
they didn't use Othram Labs. They used the private lab at the beginning. I don't think it was Othram, was it?
Right, but Othram Labs was erroneously given the credit for solving this case. You got Stacy Chapin, one of the victim mothers, out there parading for this company, and now they're nationally accredited. They're the go-to for the government from here to England. And Cellbrite, the same thing. Cellbrite didn't do shit. All they did was prove that they were the ones that put the eraser program on his computer, because he couldn't do it because he didn't have administrative privileges to do it. And so it turns out that they were lying also as well. And you know, it's like I keep waiting for the guy from OxyClean to come riding in on the shoulders of the ShamWow guy, saying, "Oh, those bloodstains were no match for my OxyClean." You know, it's like it was a giant infomercial for these companies and these laws to be passed.
That requires, listen, this big of a crime, and this big of avoidance, and this big of burying information, and this big of lying, and this big propagandizing with the media means that they're hiding something much bigger than the 4 lives, unfortunately. Way bigger than the 4 lives. The people involved in directing the execution of these 4 children. That this kid's come into something, or came into contact with something, or knew something that couldn't be known. And when you got that young girl, I told Adam everything. What does that mean? Told him everything what? Right? And so what is his role? Who is Adam? Right? And what role does Adam have in sharing what she told him with people that shouldn't have known she told him? Do you follow me? Whatever. There's just too many fucking things here that say that this is way bigger than the 4 students that were taken down.
Well,
this has got to go right to the
matters of national security. You know,
I don't think that's got anything to do with it. But
I mean, there is a lot of spooks in that area. Now think about the 60 agents that were in that area prior to the crime. What were they there for? They were there for the trafficking already. So that tells you that, you know, it's along those lines. And this, for this to happen,
don't realize that our government engages in crime intentionally, whether it's to get access to a regime in South America or Colombia or any of these places around the globe. They participate and they allow and they foul. How do you think they know how many people were trafficked? I mean, it's incredible to me that people don't realize what your government does and how corrupt the government is and how dirty they play and how they'll allow murders or help executions. I mean, I don't get how Americans are so blind to all of it. You know, you got one young kid running around showing hundreds of billions of dollars in theft from your Medicaid and Medicare. And how many Americans know that's happening? Almost none. Because the media won't tell you, because the media themselves are the propaganda arm of the criminals. And the criminals are in bed with many of your agencies with 3 letters in the government. And it isn't just CIA. USAID, the most corrupt fucking agency that ever been born. But most Americans don't know that. What they hear is, well, we're not going to be giving money to people that need water. The people that need water will move to a fucking lake, okay? That money never went to them anyway. All these not-for-profits, the Clinton Foundation, the fucking Biden Foundation, all of these places, folks, 99% of their money was for them. And they engaged with all kinds of people. That Jeffrey Epstein is just one of hundreds of sick, filthy criminals. And to think that does that have anything to do with this crime? I don't know, but I don't know that it don't. But I do know, based on just the data they gave us, that by thinking through what they've shared, that these young adults suffered for something, whether they came across it accidentally or they decided they were going to hold the ground and do something about it, that caused their lives to be taken. This wasn't some jealous boyfriend, not to suggest he wasn't involved. Not to suggest that at all. But the motive to take these 4 young adults out is much bigger than a fraternity or a bewildered, hateful boyfriend. There's no way this happened accidentally. There's no way that all four of them weren't taken out simultaneously. This crime scene is horrific in those bedrooms. Whoever did this was in those bedrooms for a significant period of time. They may even have climbed up and came in through the third floor sliding door. I don't know that.
Right.
They may have been hiding. They may have been hiding in the closets in those bedrooms.
Yeah, I think it was a laying in wait situation.
Well, listen. Let me give you evidence to that. Here's evidence to that. Direct evidence. I heard Kaylee playing with the dog, and then she started to head upstairs and said, "Good, good night. I'm going to bed." And then she screamed, "Somebody's here!" Well, let's try to understand that. How in the fuck can she be playing with her dog downstairs, and then somebody come in through the sliding door or even the front door and get past her to get up to where Maddie is? How could that be? Make that make sense. You can't, right? So how the fuck did her playing with the dog in the common area is observed by ear, is heard by fucking Dylan, lead to her going up to the stairs to go to bed, lead to her screaming, "There's someone here," and running back down them stairs? How did that person get up in that room? Nobody can explain that because nobody wants to accept what Dylan said is true. You all want to accept the cops telling you they came in through the back fucking door. And I'll tell you what, maybe they did. But they did that before the victims were in that home. And I think the wait was about Zana and Ethan's re-entry into the property. That is what kept these people disguised or hidden or at bay. They wanted them all there, not just two of them. I think the real info was Zana and Kaylee. That's what I think. And I think Ethan and Maddie may have had knowledge of it, but weren't the instigators of whatever this knowledge may have been.
I don't know about Zana. She just seems kind of aloof to me. She was always partying, always kind of drunk. I have my suspicions that...
Which one of them were really into trying to help children that were abducted? Or
I would definitely say Kaylee. And I don't feel that Maddie had any real interest.
Not Maddie. I'm saying Zana and Kelly, I think, were both targeted.
That could be... I don't know. It does seem... You have to remember... Kaylee's wounds were worse than anybody else, specifically. It does seem maybe it all revolved around her.
And what time was Eric Gower called? What time was Eric Gower called to see if he was still driving?
3 a.m. or something.
It was after Kaylee and Maddie came home.
So yeah, around, I don't remember, midnight or something.
No, it was later than midnight. It was like around 2 something.
Yeah.
And then at 3:51, she added someone to her phone. But here's what I'm saying: is that crime occurred with not just knowledge that Kaylee would be home, but with also the knowledge of when Zana and Ethan are 2:10 approximately. I thought it was 2:11, but thank you there, Melissa and Rua. Yeah. So I think all 4 of them people, their presence they were aware of their presence, and two pairs of assailants came into that property. 2 went upstairs, 2 went down to Zana's room. And then whatever was going to be discussed, or whatever was going to be taken care of began at that point. And that's what I say. I think what Dylan's telling us is absolutely true. I don't give a fuck what Ann Taylor says. She argues that couldn't have happened because Kaylee was found upstairs, and the evidence shows she never left her room after the attacks, that's an accurate statement. However, I don't think you could discount what Dylan's telling us. I think what she's telling us isn't something from some fucking vampire diary. I think she's telling us the truth. And I think that when Kaylee ran down that hallway to get Ethan's help, Ethan and Kaylee had already been taken out. Not Ethan and Kaylee, Ethan and Zana. And that person then brought her back upstairs. It's okay.
That makes sense.
Right? And that then here's the thing. I'm not a supporter of Dylan or anybody, but I am a supporter of trying to understand the data given us. Does it make sense this way? I think it makes more sense this way than it does any other way. Simply because it fills in a story that can't be. I mean, who the fuck makes that up? She's playing with her dog. She went upstairs. She screamed, "There's someone here," ran back down the stairs. That's too consistent of a statement to be made up. Who the fuck would make that up, for one? Even if you're in on the fucking crime, she's never that concisely accurate in her talking. Oh, I don't know if I dreamt it. I don't know if I saw it. I don't know if I was playing with my pussy. I don't know. Right? But in this respect, she was totally accurate and then said, well, it must have been Zaina then. Why did she switch it to Zaina? Because she was instructed to switch it to Zaina. She was led to that conclusion by the investigators, not by her own accounting of what really happened. Right?
Yeah.
And it makes much more sense. And,
yeah, I
and
think
then
bits and pieces of her story could be true. That's possible.
they gotta be true. They gotta be true.
I mean, the fact that she definitely was caught in lies, the fact that didn't matter to law enforcement exposes the entire thing.
You want to hear something fucked up? This is probably the most fucked up thing I've come from thinking about this. But I started to think about the last statement she made to the perpetrator with a cylinder that had some sort of triangle, right?
Right.
And then that led me to think about Bethany's testimony, to where she heard a pop or a bang, and then she saw what she thought were like fireworks sparking under her door. Right? Does anybody remember exactly what she said?
That sounds accurate.
Lights coming under my door.
Right.
I think that if you try to reason that through and try to understand what that could mean, this is on the edge. This is like a crazy theory. I think what she saw is accurate. And if it's accurate, and the if, I hate that word, but if it's accurate, then what would that mean? How can you connect what she saw being carried out of that home and what Bethany saw downstairs? And why each of them didn't see what the other one saw? I think there was something in that room on the first floor, something that needed to be cut open. And that what that person was carrying was an oxyacetylene cutter. And that person ignited that cutter and started to cut something metal. And that metal provided the fireworks show that she saw flashing under her door. And that whatever they were trying to retrieve, they had to cut in to get it. And that was being done while the murders upstairs happened or had already been committed. That's my assessment based on loose facts that they've shared with us, right? How could either of those stories be true? Independently, they don't look true. But when you connect them and try to just roll your mind around thinking, what would cause a bang or a pop and look like a fireworks show?
A acetylene torch definitely makes a pop. I can tell you that for sure.
I know it makes a pop, bro. I've been around it my whole life. But what would cause what she could interpret as flashes and under her door like fireworks? Now, fireworks aren't a flash of light. They're a flash of sparks. Think that through, folks. When you go watch fireworks, what do you see? A bang and all kinds of sparks. So when she referred to fireworks, there was a reason she said fireworks and not a flashing light. And the only thing I know of that could cause a firework display in an enclosed area that would flash under a door's entrance, under the little gap under your door, would be a cutting torch that's cutting through steel. So, I call me the craziest streamer in the world, but when you take what she thought was a vacuum, which might have had a triangle thing on it, okay? When you take that and connect the story of what Dylan stated, now you're starting to see something that isn't really there.
Because the acetylene torch has the triangle on there, the warning that it's flammable.
Listen, what I've done is I've connected two completely obnoxious fucking statements that nobody's really given any attention to. Right? Who's been talking about the sparks under her door and the popping noise?
Nobody.
It's just people let it. I let it roll off my back as bullshit too. But then when you connect it to what Dylan said, and she talks about a fireman, then for some reason, this is why I like streaming sometimes and talking, because it gives me a capacity to see things and connect things that probably shouldn't be fucking connected. However, in this case, tell me something that describes what what Bethany stated more accurately than what I'm saying. And not only that, folks, remember that the media caught 3 cowboy hat wearing motherfuckers going to that house unannounced, no badges, in basic fucking clothes in an unmarked minivan. Look around, do something in that house, and come back out. What the fuck were they looking for in that house? Why were they in there? Those three I think they claimed they were law enforcement. There was something. But do you remember that video that the media released? That lady,
Right. Well, one was a marshal, I think, right? And
oh yeah, legal authorities again, which goes back to my point. This was all bigger than whatever these 4 victims were for. Whatever they came across, whatever they knew, right? She said she saw a fire. It could have been a fireman or something.
well, fireman, what he's saying is like if you were carrying a acetylene torch, you might be wearing a welding jacket and have a mask, sparks mask.
Why was that room rented but never occupied? Why was it used for basic storage?
Yeah, what was in there?
Why was that room never tore apart and investigated? Why wasn't there really any serious forensic work in that room or the bathroom downstairs, the hallway, or the laundry room? Why was that section of the home given just a brief going open? Nothing really serious. That room was under lock and key. A lot of people have attributed it to the landlord using it for storage. They come up, these not Turvey, but that other guy, Whitcomb. But I'm telling you, how do you explain what Bethany saw in the realm of reality in the world we live in? I think my explanation is the closest. It may not be right, but it's the closest thing to explain fireworks.
I mean, a more logical preparation for it would have been you just take bolt cutters. To me, what if it's
a safe door? What if they were cutting the hinges on a safe?
Oh yeah.
No, she said she saw fireworks. She didn't say how long they lasted.
Right.
However, what if it was a hinge to a trap door? You see, there's something that caused her to say she heard a bang and saw what she thought were fireworks. Right? People could think of a gunshot. Well, that only goes once. Fireworks are more than just a shining of light. Fireworks are the offshoot of the sparks that are sparkling as they fall. I don't know any other reason you would claim fireworks over. I saw a flash. I heard a bang and a flashing light. Make that make sense when the statement is, I heard a bang and I saw what I thought were fireworks. You can't confuse fireworks with one light flashing. You can't confuse fireworks with flashing lights. Fireworks are sparks. What do you think, Kane?
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, she did not say the duration of those sparks. You're right. That's a great point. So what was in that room is the question. What was so valuable that they had to get in there? There does seem to be something attached to that.
That's why I kept bringing up this other item. I'm going to post it up here. It's a nice extra video image. See, I guess part of, rather than believing stuff, folks, part of thinking sometimes might lead you down some crazy fucking path. But it's not because you're crazy. You're trying to sort through and think through what it is you're being told. This halogen bomb. You see this picture on the screen?
Yep.
They talk about a 4-inch deep wound that's a half inch at the tip and 3/4 of an inch. In other words, inside the wound is a half inch thick, and at the surface of the wound it's 3/4 of an inch thick.
That's so brutal.
Well, let me just point out, folks, a couple of things about what I'm showing you. I thought of this for 2 reasons. One, the wounds inflicted on Kaylee, the physical wounds that were bashing wounds or blunt force injury wounds. But more importantly, the 2 puncture wounds, one on Kaylee and one on Zaina, that are 4 inches deep, approximately a half inch at the tip and 3/4 of an inch at the top. That led me to this thinking fireman. Now, again, like I said, I got Asperger's. Maybe I'm crazy. But after mulling around this for a long time, and the idea of a fireman, and then the thought about what Bethany saw, do you see how my train of thought led me down this path?
Mm-hmm.
And that's from thinking, not because I'm insane, but because you're trying to explain with as little information as we have. You're trying to understand what's being told you. And when somebody tells you in an autopsy report there's a 4-inch deep puncture, a half inch at its base and 3/4 of an inch at the surface, what the fuck do you think that thing would do?
Now, do you think these are sharp enough to
Dude, it's 2 foot long. I can wield that like a baseball bat. I could punch that through a car door. I could punch that through anything.
I see.
You see, that bar is 2 foot long. The other thing, let me make a more important enlightening point about this tool. If you want to enter a property, that's the only reason that tool was invented, for emergency entry. Fast, efficient, quick. Entry. That's what that tool is for. And then you then reference the wounds. And you reference, well, were these doors left open? Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, right? So why wouldn't a tool like this be appropriate? When you talk about some of the wounds on Callie, you see the edge that's sticking up in the air with the sharp edge on it? Don't they talk about a 2-inch incision? Yeah, that's approximately 2 inches. That the tip.
Yeah, there are some really odd wounds on there.
Yeah. There's odd wounds that fit the description of this particular tool. This tool also would fit the description of forced entry if needed to be done. Apparently, it didn't, but if needed to be done, it'd be good to have. More importantly, the spike end would be appropriate to the description of the wounds inflicted on Kaylee and Zane. Only those two got wounds from something like that. Otherwise, people were thinking screwdrivers or puncture wounds based on the size that were reported are consistent exactly.
No, there's no screwdriver that's 2 inches wide.
No.
That's for the answer.
There's no screwdriver that's going to punch into 4 inches and leave a ½ inch at the base, at the tip, and 3/4 of an inch at the top.
I mean, even knives aren't 2 inches wide.
And they're round. They're circular wounds. What is that? Do you see? That's how my fucking brain. That's what Asperger's does to folks. Sometimes I take a nap just to get away from myself. I'm serious, bro, because I go through this with physicists, astrophysicists, all kinds of different people, mathematicians. I talk with people from JPL and all kinds of places. And I sometimes drive them nuts, but in the end, a lot of them are like, I think you're not just crazy. You're probably right about your description. Anyway, then connect the bullshit downstairs. What did a murderer do? Light a sparkler? What did he do to cause fireworks to display underneath her door? Think about that. What would possibly be? You went in there and killed people with a knife. Why are there flashes downstairs where there was supposed to be no activity of crime? None. Why was Bethany witnessing what she thought to be fireworks? Listen, could Bethany have been dreaming? Yeah, I guess. Could Bethany have been? That's really the only way to explain it, dreaming, right?
Well, I mean, I question whether she or not she was really there, just based on her clothing, the entire, like, you have Dylan in her t-shirt and her pajama bottoms, no shoes, and then you have Bethany in a, like she went to Wimbledon. She's got the ball cap on, the hair back, the go-out shirt, and the go-out shorts, socks, and shoes. It's like she was coming home from somewhere.
She may have left before the police were called. I wouldn't argue that. But I think some of the things, it's hard to do. But until there's absolute proof that the text messages, listen, until those text messages between her and Dylan can be proven to have taken place in the same room or from different locations, you have to take it as fact. You don't have to like it. But you then have to build your thoughts around some things that are being shared with you, right? So in other words, I accept that Dylan and Bethany were texting back and forth from within the property. I accept that Dylan ran down the stairs and went into Bethany's room. I don't have any evidence to prove otherwise. That's
I mean, what I mean. You got to think they didn't go to the bathroom for 8 hours. They didn't, It's
no, I'm not saying there isn't more questions to be asked, but I'm saying the initial activity. I don't doubt like I'm saying, some things, folks, whether you like it or not, you have to try to look at them as observable facts and then try to understand how they could make sense in a way that's reasonable. I think when I explain the movements of Kelly, I'm giving you a reasonable explanation of what Dylan heard.
It's a great look. The thing is, you're basically, I mean, for me, everything else they've said is horseshit. You're accepting one portion of what they were talking about as truth, which is possible.
I think that there's more truth to what they said. I think there's a lot of truth to what they said. I think what's happened is we've allowed ourselves to believe everything they said is horseshit. And I can't say this enough. There is not
I
a
mean, it's a
single
fact
fucking lie.
that she lied for sure in
Wait,
certain
wait.
instances. So.
But you have to try to understand what she lied about, because a lie cannot exist without a truth being hidden. You can't just lie. There's a truth behind the lie. If I say to you, like I go to work and I'm late, oh, well, it was traffic. I lied. What am I protecting? Trying to protect my job. In other words, there's always a truth. There's always a motive, or a lie cannot exist. So some things that she's saying, you're right, are lies. I don't discount that at all. I think the travel and the person that she claims she witnessed, I don't think that's true at all. I think that was something that was added, maybe was instructed to be said. I think that the mask was added, the eyebrow was added. She was led, we've seen her get led in interviews to come to conclusions that they gave her. So I don't discount that the woman's a liar at all. But I think it's important to not accept all of everything they both said as lies. There has to be some truth to what they're saying, right? Somebody did come in that house. Somebody did kill them people, whether it be multiple people or an individual. That can't be denied, right? That's an unmutable fact. You can't discount that. These 4 people were killed. Okay. Then Dylan makes statements. You have to sort through, are what she's saying plausible? We've accepted that she lied about who ran up and down the stairs because Ann Taylor said, and questioned it herself, that it can't be true because Kaylee was found upstairs and the evidence shows she never left the room after the attack. But what Dylan described had nothing to do with the attack, and everything to do with pre-attack. And a lot of us haven't really given it that kind of scrutiny to realize that the timeline, when Dylan tells you this, Dylan is telling you something that may happen at 2 o'clock, like I said, but she's telling you about an event that happened in a chronological way that really can't be discounted. That's right. She had to tell some truth to look like she wasn't involved. I really think that she was honest with that. I think she was also honest about seeing someone in the house. I don't think how she describes that person is honest at all. I think she knew, and I think she told us that she knew the reason they didn't attack her was because maybe they knew her and were protecting her. There's another example of the truth coming forward that doesn't fit with all her lies. But I think that that's an accurate statement from her. I don't discount that the people committed the crime she knew. Even worse, she colluded with. She got Kaylee to come home. I think there was also some way or somehow that there was a signal for these folks to know that everybody was back in that house. When she said she doesn't know what time Zaina and Ethan came home, that's a dumb fucking lie. I bet if we could decide what time that happened, and this is why they're probably hiding it, but if you could find the time to put those 2 kids in that home, I bet you would find a text message from Dylan or a phone call from Dylan. That's an unrelated directly to that, but to whoever she called or texted was giving people the word that they were now all home.
No doubt.
Right.
Yeah, whether it was flashing light, because we do see a flashing light in the Banfield body cam.
What about calling up the driver and asking if he's still driving? What about adding that person to your text to her phone?
Right,
what
because
the addition? Yeah,
there's no dump of Eric Gower's phone, right?
Correct. I think that there was a communication from that house to let the people know that we're going to commit this crime. That they're all here. Without saying yep, they're all here.
There is a still frame, if you take it from Eric Gower's home security system, that it looks like he's bleeding out from his stomach. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Oh no, I think
so.
But I think that was proven to be on a date unrelated to the crime, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, if you're bleeding on the night of and you were involved,
right?
It's kind of suspicious to me, no matter what.
I think that was shown to be a different date.
I see.
It was a home surveillance camera. What produced that?
Right.
But I believe the date was different. That it had nothing to do with the actual crime that night. Here's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to. I don't have any thoughts that I can solve this crime. But I think that if some of these things are thought about and considered, that there's information here that shows us that this crime is way bigger than a jealous dog.
100%.
Right? Way bigger than some random Brian Kohlberger going and offing these 4 people.
Yeah, I mean, he literally said when he was arrested, I'm sure that they have my phone records. And, you know, I mean, he sounded pretty confident in the fact that they would, well,
I think Cy Ray, too, is kind of a... I think Cy Ray, I think all 3 of them, all gave kudos to the cops in one way, shape, or form to protect their own career. Not from like...
Yeah, there was something that I guess made him kind of change his story later, but he definitely tore apart Balance's report.
Well, he said right on the stand that if evidence is produced, it shows you information different than if they've given. I reserve the right to change. He said that right on the stand in the early now. And so he didn't produce anything to the public that would change our mind. That's the conundrum here. He still thinks the kid did it. I think he thinks the phone isn't the telling issue of showing he did it. I think that's kind of, or maybe he thinks if they'd have done it a different way, they would have shown different routes at different times.
Yeah, there is that in his book, but when you read the report that he presented to the hearing, it's
right.
Everything that they said was wrong in an effort to skew the jury's opinion. Literally said that. So
I want to say this too to people that they don't get it. I don't think a lot of Americans get this. I think it's very sad. That a lot of the results that you find in these courts are not because of truth. They're not because they're based on fact. They're not for any of that even close. A result is desired by those who do. And that result becomes whatever that result is. And if you look at the Gilgo case, where 10 years of corruption kept the serial killer out of the street, I think you're looking at the same problem here. That the level of corruption here is deep, and it's got a history. And that level of corruption was in danger. And somehow, some horrible way, these 4 young people were aware of this corruption.
they paid the price for knowing.
And they paid the price of their lives. And those people that were in charge made sure the investigation provided an outcome. So people like us are shut up. It's called conspiracy and liars and antagonists. But you know, it's now I've made some pretty crazy observations in this. But I wish somebody can explain to me in a different way what Bethany described and what Dylan described on somebody's back. Why, if he was all clad in back, did it suddenly turn into somebody carrying a cylinder or something, maybe with a triangle on it? Where was all that in the original interview? No. I think that part of the description is true. I think she did see somebody there that had that piece of equipment. I think we try to realize, we think maybe it was a vacuum to clean the crime scene. I don't think so at all. Vacuums don't make sparks.
Yeah, I don't see what good a vacuum would do.
No. Anyway. And also, I don't know if you heard earlier, but I think a lot of people are under the illusion that when Tarvey and others talk about crime scene cleanup, you are under the illusion that he's talking about blood being cleaned on walls. That cast off wasn't diluted because it was cleaned after it hit the wall. That cast off was diluted before it ever hit the fucking wall.
Right.
Okay? And so your understanding of crime scene cleanup has not anything to do with that cast off being cleaned on the wall. It's that they were cleaned up and the tools were cleaned up. And those items and those people, that cast off from them was diluted because they attempted to clean it, whether it be the dog that was washed. That cast off on those walls appeared there in a diluted form. It was not diluted after. You know? And so our understanding of some of these things has been misunderstood because, you know, we all get a common idea that this is, or you know, people believe one way or another rather than trying to sort through the actual details of what you're being told. Sometimes it's just not easy. Sometimes it's not worth the fucking trouble. Like for me, I got all the time and money in the world. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So if I want to sit around and worry about Brian Colbert's case, I can take a day or 2, 10, 30, whatever. I can do it. A lot of people just don't have that time. And a lot of people don't have Asperger's. Something fucking bothers you, man. You need to figure it out. Right?
Yeah. Well, hey, let me go, Sergeant. I'm gonna hit the hay here. Thanks for having me, brother.
Well, thanks for coming up there, Kane. Oh, yeah, he got removed. You guys know I am removed. You just remove. When I'm done with you, I'm done. Scully Darlon Newberg. I have no idea what that is. Yeah, I think what I shared with you folks from the screen is an attempt to understand what's probably not understandable. But I think that I'm not talking about aliens. I'm not talking about spaceships. I'm not talking about magic. I'm not talking about anything. I'm talking about real life things that are encounterable, that are real, that are part of everyday life, that may have been present at this crime scene. I'm trying to help people see that some of what's been told us is true. And a vast degree of what we've been told is untrue or embellished upon to hide some bigger truth. That 4 people aren't just randomly killed in a home with this degree of anger, with this degree of ferocity, because you bumped into him as a witness in the kitchen. I don't think that the argument that Zana was in the kitchen is legitimate, that she was getting her food. I don't think that has anything to do with what happened in poor Zana's bedroom. She was already in that bedroom, was already in there with Ethan when the attackers arrived. I think the same holds true for what happened upstairs. But I think what they're not doing is nobody is really, it's so easy to get discouraged and take what people say as a lie. Just because I lied once doesn't mean I lie about everything. Okay? When she said she heard Caleb, I'm going to tell you that you have to start reviewing that in your mind to see that is true. If that's true, what does that mean? Well, that means something entirely different. It's actually important. It means that there were multiple perpetrators that existed in that home simultaneously in each room. If what Dylan tells us, and there's no reason to say she's lying, her state of what Kaylee did that night with the dog shows unequivocally that there were killers in the both up and downstairs areas simultaneously. That says a lot. That's what a lot of people have been trying to wrap their head on. We make these statements, there's no way one guy did it. Well, take what Dylan said. Dylan's words show that the truth of the matter is that when she seen there's someone here, she was upstairs. And that when Dylan heard, it's okay, I'm here to help. Haley was now down. That means there were multiple perpetrators in both rooms. Now, I don't know how people can't wrap their head around that. So, and I'm going to do a poll before I close this down. How long have I been in? Fucking rattling on for 113 minutes like a lunatic. And by the way, thank you. So when we look at Dylan's statements about the movements of Caleb, when we put that movement in context of what it potentially means, in my opinion, what it unquestionably means. How many of you with the number 1, yes, and number 2, no, accept the idea that Dylan's words not only show the movement of Kaylee, but Kaylee's movement now shows unequivocally multiple perpetrators both upstairs and downstairs at the same time. 1, you agree with that. 2, you disagree. So if you don't mind doing the poll, I'd like to see what people think about what I think. MS Nummikins, thank you for your answer. And don't agree with me to be nice, folks. Because listen, if I'm wrong, I love being wrong. I love because then I can learn. Being wrong is the most important thing I've ever encountered in my life. It's so important to know when you're wrong. No shame here. I appreciate. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 people that say 1. Is there anybody that wants to go with 2 and just simply let me get this comment. Somebody that wants to say 2. I'd be happy to hear someone's opinion on why number 2. So number 1, taking Dylan's words at face value, places Kaylee in the common area with the dog. Kaylee going to bed. Kaylee at the top of the stairs screaming, there's someone here, running back down the stairs. Down the hallway towards where Dana and Ethan would be. And then being confronted by another perpetrator stating, it's okay, I'm here to help. Meaning that she is witness now to perpetrators in each area of the home. Kaylee, to the downstairs perpetrator and to the upstairs perpetrator she previously witnessed. I think that is I don't even know, man. I think that's as smooth of an arrangement of the data. Yeah, everybody's trying to dissuade us from it being Caleb. And that they're trying to force even they got Dylan to say it may have been it may have been Zainab. But that's also kind of strange when she tells the police that she thought she saw, or the cop thought she said Kaylee. Right? Now let me go through this. You guys help me with this. Didn't one of the officers identify the girl on the second floor as Kaylee in his report? Why did he think it was Kaylee? When it turned out to be Zainab. Remember, there's a police report that says that. Or at least something written up days later by one of the arriving officers on the scene. That's confusing. But I think that maybe some of you guys can take this summation, and if it's going to be hard to get people to listen. I don't think a lot of people want to hear that Dylan said something that's accurate. I don't think even more important. I don't know if Dylan said that or not, but if Dylan said that, I think he may have got it wrong just because sometimes we all get the names wrong too. So that could be. I think he was stuck on the fact that there was, Kaylee was playing with the dog. Then I heard Kaylee go upstairs and say goodnight, and then Kaylee screamed someone's here and came running down the stairs. So that would put her back in the second floor. I think maybe the policeman was confused because the amount of times Kaylee was mentioned in that little synopsis of what Dylan described happened. But I think it's wrong for us to just dismiss hat in hand that never happened, that couldn't happen. And I think that when you then take some of the data that I've injected into it, that there's no proof to support what I said. There's no proof to support what Dylan said. But if you approach it, giving it credibility, and then try to take and make sense of what that really tells us. It tells us a whole different story about what happened in that house. The actions and movements of the people in that house. And then I think it gives more credibility to show unequivocally there was more than one perpetrator in that house. I just don't think that anybody could discount that as being like, call me a conspiracy theory, call me whatever the hell you want. I really don't think. I say to you folks that the facts are telling us a story. The facts point to this, and it supports what everybody thinks, it supports everybody's belief that there were more than one perpetrator. But I'm not defining the facts because I believe there was more than one perpetrator. I know there was more than one perpetrator based on this assemblage of facts. This assemblage of facts now makes it impossible to argue that only Brian Kohlberger was in that home. And even if it was Brian Kohlberger in the bathroom that told Taylor, it's okay, I'm here to help. That does not account for the guys he saw upstairs. So therefore, you immediately have to do immediately. That synopsis of events based on Dylan's statements, I think I'm probably more content with that, not because I was able to put it together, but more content with it because it says so much about the activity in that home that night without ever being there to witness. And I'm glad so many of you said yeah, I don't feel crazy as I thought when I started it. So law enforcement was wearing a balaclava and why did she like it? But that balaclava was given to her by the police. That balaclava was given to her. She didn't even know what a balaclava was. The cop painted a picture of it. The cop brought that, not her. She said ski mask to begin. Like a ski mask. She didn't have a description or a name for it. That was given to her by the police. Everything that she described was given to her by the police. That's what makes it. See, so much of what Dylan said is so fucked up, and it don't make any sense. But listen, there's no way everything she told us is a lie. There's no way she told us a lie. So if you try to take what she said about what she heard and what she saw, try to make real sense of it in the and what we know to be true. We know two girls were killed upstairs. We know Dana and Ethan were killed downstairs on the second floor. We know this to be true. Nobody can dispute that. And now take that knowledge and try to fit what she's telling you into it, right? I'm not saying she didn't do it for a benefit, but what I'm trying to say to you is that even in saying this for her benefit, she's describing a crime that occurred in her home through what she heard. And in her description, she's confirming multiple perpetrators. Not that she saw one guy leave that they're hanging their hat on. No. But in the fact that Kaylee both screamed upstairs, somebody was here, ran down to the bathroom where then Dylan states she heard somebody say to her, "It's okay, I'm here to help." That proves multiple perpetrators. That one statement does a lot. Why Ann Taylor didn't put it together that way is and I don't think anybody, and I'm not trying to like take credit or be a fucking Eagles maniac, although I am highly capable. But what I am trying to point out here is that through this particular perspective, it really closes the circle on multiple perpetrators. Whether you like Dylan or not, whether Dylan intended to do this or not, Dylan described multiple perpetrators and her presentation to the police when she spoke to them. That in and of itself is beyond exculpatory fucking to Brian Hope. Look at Lucy, you're still here? Lucy, honey, what are you doing late? You want to get together for a late night nightcap? Unbelievable. I can't believe Lucy is sitting here listening. I ain't got no Evo. I got Eggo waffles, though. You can have some of them tonight. I got the syrup, got the butter, real butter, too. I don't eat that fake bullshit or margarine. Same thing with mayonnaise. Hellman's only, man. Real mayonnaise. Old Sarge goes for the real stuff. And the craziest, listen, I don't think my explanation of Dylan's words is crazy. Actually, I think it's probably pragmatic and very logical. I think the observations that come from her statements are probably more real than anybody ever considered, because we've discounted her. The same thing with when I say about Bethany, what Bethany witnessed. Bethany witnessed those sparks, the fireworks from under her door. Jane is confused. Jane, you're confused. I think, yeah, come on there. Someone race over for MS Mom 73. And race over for some what? And I got a nice, beautiful stainless steel four waffle toast. Got 14 different heat settings. Probably got some computer back tracker in it too, so these new data centers can track when I make a waffle. What the hell? I think also, as crazy as it sounds, that tool that I show, to me, reasonably has something to do with the crime. And I think the description of what Bethany is described as an explanation is what did that fucking guy say? Sherlock Holmes. Okay. When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And in all fairness, I think, and I do. I've watched everything Sherlock Holmes. I definitely do. So I'm going to post that here. So let's eliminate the impossible, and let's accept that what Bethany described actually happened. Well, the bushy eyebrows was given to her by the police. But let's break it down when it comes to the story of Kaylee that I shared. When you have eliminated the impossible, well, eliminating the impossible would be eliminating. I don't know if there's anything impossible that Dylan stated. Everything Dylan stated was completely possible to have happened, right? So how improbable is it when you run that when you run it to ground, when you run that and try to make a circle, try to make a straight line, make a circle? How do you do that? And in this case, when you talk about Kaylee playing with the dog up the stairs, good night, someone's here running down the stairs and ending up in the bathroom on the second floor, as Dylan described. That the truth must be that there were at least two intruders in that property. One that accosted her in the bathroom, and the one that she ran for upstairs. I mean, in fact, there is no statement, there is no confusion about only one person coming down the stairs. So let me clarify this, so you guys can then even reinforce my opinion more intensely. There is no confusion nor argument of more than one person coming down the stairs. Now, there's another analysis that states Kate or Xana heard something and she walked up the stairs and ran down the stairs. She thought, and that's what people are supplanting. So they're taking Dylan's words and throwing them out the window, and they're putting Xana in her place of going up the stairs and then running down the stairs. But the problem with doing that is obvious. It's obviously wrong because the chain of events don't fit what Dylan said. Dog play, good night, there's someone here, ran down the stairs, and then she heard her on the second floor bathroom. That particular series of events are so tightly knit together in one series of events. There's no hesitating, no question that's what she said. Immediately, come right out. That's what I heard. That's blah, blah, blah. To supplant that with Xana getting her food in the kitchen, as these investigators and these book writers want to make, and suggesting Xana came in contact with the killer and ran to her bedroom, completely contradictory to anything any witness has stated, to anything that we could see in the crime scene as being real, right? Yeah, because there is no argument by Dylan, there is no statement by Dylan that more than one person came down the stairs. None. No, that means the person upstairs stayed up there with just her and someone who was down there in the living room. No, not her and just someone. And it wasn't the living room. She ended up in the bathroom next to Xana's room. And one of the perpetrators in Xana's room confronted her or trapped her. And that's when the statement, "It's okay, I'm here to help," came forward. That fits perfect. That allows what Dylan told us to be true. Not because I'm on Dylan's team, but because Dylan was emphatical about that. That's what happened. It only later got changed that it was probably Xana's. But that was not her story. Her initial understanding of that evening and the events that she heard are unarguable. I mean, there's no... Could it have been Xana that ran up the stairs? Yeah. Then they argue that the perpetrator chased her or the perpetrator ran into her in the kitchen. These are all assumptions with no supporting evidence. So I'll take myself away from Turvey. I'll take myself away from Whitcomb. I'll take myself away from every streamer out there. There's no evidence to put Xana in that kitchen. None. None. And for people to say, well, there was a plate in her room. Well, there's a plate on my coffee table from my dinner earlier. I'll wake up tomorrow morning and put it in the sink and wash it. It'll be on the coffee table all night. That doesn't mean I went to the kitchen tonight and picked it up, put it on the table. You see, there's There's no evidence to support the movement of Zaina into the common area, into the kitchen, coming in contact with a killer and fleeing to her room. As a matter of fact, that table, right? Even that table, where if you were to take Kaylee, who's trying to maneuver her way through to get to Ethan, her motive to run in that direction and get through that area as fast as she can to get to Ethan for help would make more sense than anything in the fucking world. And that's where she took off. From the upstairs, down the stairs, up past Dylan's room, through the area where that table was. Even if she bumped the table, wouldn't matter. It makes more sense for Kaylee to have made that trip through that common area than it does Zane. And they can argue all they want about the cast off, or you know, how did Kaylee's blood get downstairs? Well, it got downstairs because there were other killers up there, and she was brought upstairs by whoever came from the room that were involved with the murders of both Zaina and Ethan. Because I just can't get out of my head that somebody committed a pair of murders, came downstairs, and then committed another pair of murders. To me, these murders in these rooms were done by two individuals in each room at the same time. Why did Dylan say that they went up from here? Yeah, she did say that earlier in the evening. I hope it's true, but I don't know. So that means the person upstairs stayed up there. Yeah. The person that went upstairs, she ran downstairs. There was no need to chase. There was other perpetrators that were already on the property. I'm telling you, I think this was a well-planned and sadly well-executed crime. I don't think that the people you're dealing with were fraternity kids. I don't think the people you're dealing with some first-timer named Kohlberger. I don't think that Kaylee being there is an accident. I don't think that there's any way to suggest that it was. I think when you start to try to put all of this puzzle together into one piece. Okay? No, I understand. You know, I'm not criticizing. Yeah, she had drawings of eyebrows and eyes. There was also, according to Turvey, or with the Wick, that there was that picture of people with prominent eyebrows in the bathroom on the second floor. So it may not have just been her that was obsessed with eyebrows. I don't think Kaylee is a total misdirection at all. I think Kaylee is an integral part of the story. I think Kaylee in that slip up fight, not even the slip up. No, but let's just say that I don't think anybody has ever contradicted the fact that she wasn't out of town, that she didn't come back. Even her mother said she came back. She wanted to show her friends the car. I don't think there's any fact to suggest that she did not leave that home and then come back for this particular weekend. Now, whether she was going to stay, but she was on her finals too, so she had no real reason to stay. Plus, they were heading towards break. I don't think you're right here, Luke. I think you're not. I think the target had to have been both the first and second floor. I don't think that there was an accident when it came to Zaina and Ethan. I don't think there was any accident there at all. Whatever her reasons, Luke, there could be a million reasons. When you have to accept some of what that young girl said, Dylan, no matter how much you dislike or disagree with her, some of what she says is true. So it has to. It can't be a completely made up story. The only thing she ever added to the story was what the police led her to add, right? What the police led her. They led her to the mask. They led her to the balaclava. They led her to the bushy eyebrow. She said some things that had nothing to do with being led to, right? There was never anybody that discounted that she came back to be the plus one for Dylan. I don't think anybody has ever contradicted that. I don't think anybody has ever said that she didn't leave or that she didn't move or wasn't in the process of moving her life on to somewhere else. I think all the information supports that. that may be true, but she did also then buy the Range Rover. And she bought that Range Rover with her mother and her grandmother. There's documents. When did she buy the Range Rover? On the 10th? Took possession of it on the 10th? She didn't buy that in Moscow, Idaho. They don't know who started the rumor that she may not have completely moved out, but I think that she was in the process of moving her life forward. Wasn't she going to move to Austin, Texas? No, I'm not discounting that she may not have completely moved out. Yeah, she purchased it in Spokane on the 10th. Okay. And her mother and grandmother were with her. I don't think that this crime or that the taking of her life may not have ever happened had she not been home. I think the fact that she came home was too much of a coincidence. The fact that she was there. Yeah, so she had a whole bunch of plans. She was basically done with school. I mean, you're supporting in some respects, supporting what I'm saying, right? She was in the process of her life of moving forward, going on to bigger and better things. New boyfriend, broke up with her old boy, and I suspect that her coming back to be there was also to show her friends the new vehicle she bought. Right, according to her mother, that's what her mother said. Right? We don't know because I'll tell you why we don't know, because they didn't do a data dump on their phones or at least release them. I also suspect that could actually be attributed off of Dylan's. I suspect, but you'll never know because it was probably Snapchat. I suspect the reason why Dylan tells you she doesn't know when they came home is because Dylan knew when. And I think at that point in time, the presence of all four people in the house, they did. Zana has AT&T. So what time did she come home? Do you know what time she came home, Lucy? I mean, is there evidence to say what time Zana and Ethan got back to the residence? No. Why have you made it clear? Not any of those documents? Because I think if you make it clear and you start tracking the activity of the other phones that their information is being released, you're going to see an overlap. That's what I think. I think that this crime is way bigger than just some pissed off fraternity guy about his girlfriend. I think that the idea that they keep claiming that Zana was collateral damage is just wrong. I think that that's just a mistake that we've all been, just like a car being there. It's just another topic they've shared with us. I think when you start looking at what is actually verifiable, in the minuscule amounts that we've got, you can actually start to paint a picture. Whether the picture is accurate or not, that's up for debate. I agree with that. I'm not arguing that I'm right. But I think that what Dylan said and the movements of Kaylee is accurate. I think also there's enough information released to tell me that these two crimes didn't happen one after the other. That perpetrators were in that home on both floors at the same time. Multiple perpetrators does not, to me, suggest that two people were upstairs and then came downstairs to kill the other. It doesn't say that to me at all. I think there were multiple perpetrators on both, up on the third and on the second floor. I don't think there's a massive time delay between the murders of four people. And I think it's no coincidence that all four people were in the house at the same time. I don't think there'd have been any need, if you're dressed in black and you're covered up, for a perpetrator to chase down what may be a witness, when the fact of the matter is, according to the surviving witness, the person stood and looked at him. They came with eye contact, walked by them. So I don't know that if somebody is if you give any credence to Dylan, which most people don't want to, but if there's somebody there in black, I don't see why you would then. I don't know. I was, in my past life, I was a criminal. And I wouldn't go and murder two more because I murdered two upstairs and just justify it. Unless they got a clear look at me and they could recognize me for who I was. And they could name me. Okay? Then yeah, I guess. But that's not always how a criminal works. So let's go back to the idea that this is Jack the core, or let's go back to the idea it was somebody from the frat or somebody that had a problem with where they were stalking Kaylee. It doesn't explain why they wouldn't just run out the door. I mean, let's be clear. You know how many times criminal runs and people see him? That's what I mean. I don't accept the state's narrative, nor Whitcomb, nor Turvey, that Zana was collateral damage. That doesn't make any fucking sense. And what makes more sense is, in my opinion, based on the data that has been released, are at least 4 perpetrators in that home. Who's winning? I can't even know who's winning. When you get these paints. That I don't know. Oh, William Hardy right there. Right above your precinct comment. I didn't even speak. William Hardy. Any. What's going on? Well, welcome there, William Hardy. Like the hell. Remove. All right. Let's wind this up. Been a good 2 hours. It's only 12:22 in the morning. Who was on vacation for debriefing? Is that you, William? Maybe not. All right. Any more comments out of you, Luce? I don't know if I'm going to share my waffles with you now. Who's in the Bahamas? Oh, man. Oh, well, obviously you're on the mend. It looks like you're in limestone. Hope you're going to be all right, William. Was it serious? You don't want to hear about anybody having surgery. I'm anti-needle, anti-knife. Are you resting at home or are you in the Bahamas? Are you on the mend? Are you like in recovery? Are you going to be all right? They didn't chop anything important off, did they? Well, oh, that's an intestine. Well, you're less full of shit, William. So that's nothing to be ashamed of, right? Nothing else. Now he's off to work. Well, that's good. I just stopped working. I sold my business and got a few loose ends to fix up. What? Come on, you guys know how I am. I always see the bright side of things. Cut out some intestine, you're less full of shit. That's a good thing. I'm just fucked up there. You know. But you got to find humor wherever you can find it. What the hell? Well, Lucy, say something, Lucy. Don't make me stalk you. My God, I'm buying myself a white lobster. You better watch your ass. I will hunt you down with my 2015 lobster. Yeah, you gotta laugh a little at me. Oh, yeah. I remember my grandpa. Diabetes. Alcoholic diabetic. Taking pieces off. First his foot, then below the knee, then his other foot. And I remember visiting. I was little. And I was visiting, and I remember, my stepmom, his children, begging to stop drinking, blah, blah, blah. Stop drinking, I'm doing you all a favor. By the time they bury me, he would pass away. as he's taking down the nose. The more they cut off, the less you gotta carry, he would say. Oh man, that's kind of fucked up. So even in its it's still fine. What are you worried about? You have less to carry. What the hell? I'm checking my phone, see if I have any crazy messages. Not a single one. What time? What? All right. I appreciate you listening to me. Hanging in there for me to share whatever crazy shit was going on in my head. But I'll stand strong. Dylan told us the truth about the movement of Taylor. And I think that those movements tell a bigger story and at least supports the fact that, especially when people want to argue there were more than one perpetrator. I think those movements describe it. I think that's important for some reason. I don't know. But otherwise, if anybody has something to say it now in the chat before I tune all you out. Be good. They had trouble. Apparently, StreamYard says you can get a $10 discount if you use StreamYard and buy their package of streaming software. Yes. Which they make you pay for every year. I ran it for 2 years and I stopped paying. Now they keep emailing me, and every time I try to sign into StreamYard, they're bombarding me with fucking buy this stuff. Buy this. Thanks there, Miss Mama. Thank you there, William. Have a good evening. Love Tina. I guess you say your name if maybe you say you love it. It's kind of fun. Lucy Morningstar, the hallucinator. Yeah, or I could fucking argue back and forth forever. Everybody be good. Stay out of trouble. Have a good night. I'm going to shut her down, and I'll be back again. I don't know when, but pretty soon.